Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming back on Blockchain Rock. This week, we have two very special guests. We have Eddy Travia, CEO and co-founder at Coinsilium, and we have Malcolm Palle, which is the co-founder and chairman at Coinsilium. So Eddy and Malcolm, thank you so much for making the time. We've already tried to record the episode. We had some technical difficulties, so we're here again. But the topic of today is way too interesting not to, warrant a second trial and a third one. Hopefully that won't be the case, because today we're speaking about non-fungible tokens. Of course, they're one of the hottest topics, and Coinsilium is one of the only companies. In a moment, Malcolm and Eddy will tell you more about the company. But they are also one of the of the few that actually have experience in developing a non-fungible token project fully. So thank you so much again for coming. And if you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and on what Coinsilium is doing, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. Thank you very much, Omri. As Omri said, I'm Malcolm Palle. I'm co-founder and chairman of Coinsilium Group. Coinsilium is a public company listed on the Aquis exchange in London under the ticker symbol COIN, C-O-I-N. And we're also, our company's shares are traded on the OTCQB market in the US, in New York, under ticker symbol CINGF. Our main focus is on venture building in the open finance and crypto finance space, and we founded in 2015 as a blockchain focused company, first IPO of a blockchain focused company that happened in the world, and we're now on a journey to effectively commercialize and build ventures in the using blockchain technology, focusing on open finance, crypto finance, which covers decentralized finance as well, but also particularly NFTs. I'll hand over to Eddy, and hopefully he'll give you another slant on what I've said.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Omri, for the invitation. So I'm Eddy Travia. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Coinsilium. This all adventure started back in 2013 when I set up an incubator in the space. And at the time, there was not even blockchain as a buzzword. It was more Bitcoin, just Bitcoin at the time. And we were helping Bitcoin startups to grow. And then with Malcolm and a couple of other partners, we created Coinsilium, and we listed it, as Malcolm said, in 2015. And that was a big thing we felt in the industry. It was the first one, also gave a lot of legitimacy to the whole sector. And obviously at the time, there were not companies, pouring billions of dollars in this industry, far from it, but it was very exciting. And we helped, we helped a few companies grow. One of them is called IOV Labs, at the time RSK as well, and they are in Gibraltar. And we have been, through the ups and downs, the cycles of the industry, but we have been extremely busy in 2017, 2018 with all these ICOs, and now we are after what we called in the crypto winter. And now in last year, 2020, and this year, it has been also extremely busy, and we see a huge interest from institutions all around the world. So NFT is one of our focuses, and very happy to talk more about this with you.
So thank you very much, both, for the introduction. It's really, so first of all, before delving into it, for those that might be listening or watching us and don't really know what's an NFT, NFT refers to non-fungible tokens. So unlike other forms of token, unlike fungible tokens, such as, for example, Bitcoin, Ethereum, which can be traded one-to-one in that they both hold the same exact value, or at least like that group of fractions, that constitute what we refer to as one unit, basically presents the same value. Non-fungible token, that doesn't apply to non-fungible token. Each non-fungible token is unique in that it resemble more an asset, like a real world asset, correct? So it would be almost like trading a painting with I'm not sure, the rights over a song. And we'll go more into the use case. Actually, probably that would be the next natural kind of way to flow into that. But so yeah, why are they so exciting? Of course, 2021 has been a boom. I'd say the boom of NFT. Finance is as popular as ever, and I'm also putting, you know, crypto and blockchain in finance, and I hope I don't get murdered but for doing that. But I do think that it's now a huge part of pop culture as well. You know, social media really brought it within the popular culture, and you know, you see it with different phenomena, such as, for example, Robinhood and the GameStop, you know, saga. And I think that's really interesting. And now, of course, you have NFTs, which are, again, gaining a lot of popularity and traction. And, you know, with people, with entrepreneur like Mark Cuban getting into them and using them and, you know, implementing some projects, as well as some influencers, such, for example, Logan Paul, you know, pegging them to Pokemon card and to his own NFT. That Mouse, another sort of, you know, very well-known artist and music producer, releasing kind of like limited card. So why are they so attractive? What are the different use cases for them? Why, you know, what made you, of course, as a company which is listed, decide to embrace this strategy and implement?
If I can start perhaps on sort of the journey that we went on, we Coinsilium last year, we carried out an internal strategic review of our direction, and after it became apparent that the market was moving very fast into decentralized finance and open finance, and we were sort of focusing, and we still are sort of recognizing that that's the, you know, where the big opportunities are. But sort of left field in that whole mix during our review, the strategic review we were carrying out, some ideas around non-fungible tokens started to surface, and we then took a deeper dive into, you know, what we kind of peripherally knew was going on, and we saw collectibles, particularly in Gibraltar, which is, let's say, where we're operationally based as well, and this whole kind of market growing from a very embryonic state. So the first and the most obvious thing that we came across was these crypto counterparts or NFT counterparts for stamps, which some of the other jurisdictions had launched. And after speaking to some of the collectors and sort of looking at the mechanics, thought, well, we can do this. And so that was sort of when we launched with, in partnership with the Gibraltar Philatelic Bureau, a crypto stamp for the government here, as in the government issued stamps, and they use the Gibraltar Philatelic Bureau as the main outlet here. And the conversation was quite timely because you know, we had they've as you know, Gibraltar is a, you know, pretty kind of focused regulatory jurisdiction, and the Post Office or Gibraltar Philatelic Bureau were looking at launching a postage stamp, a commemorative stamp for cryptocurrencies. So when we added the NFT dimension to it, it was a no-brainer. And for us, you know, this is a very straightforward way of us getting into this space. And it's not by any means the end of the road. It's just the first part of the journey, because collectibles, as massive a market as it is not the only use case, but it is a big enough kind of one for us to get our arms around. So that's how we sort of started in it, and that's why we're launching a NFT counterpart to a cryptocurrency stamp to be issued by Gibraltar, and that's sort of our role in the first instance. And perhaps Eddy can sort of give you some examples of other use cases, but you know, that's really what got us into it.
Because apologies, Eddy, just like to add to what, you know, to what Malcolm said, I think it's very interesting because to look at it maybe from the perspective of what type of problem do NFTs solve, so that it's very practical knowledge for people that maybe are not as familiar or aware with the technology.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Eddy, go on, carry on.
That's fine. Okay. No, it doesn't matter. So I was going to say the first problem that NFTs have been known to solve is the liquidity of assets that are, as you were saying, unique, because we're not talking about, as we were saying, assets that can easily be exchanged one for another. We're talking about unique, specific assets. So for example, let's say art or a vintage car or wine, or this kind of assets that are extremely unique, and that in the real economy they are not liquid assets, because you don't really have a very large markets for those. So in the world of NFTs, you give access. So in a bit in the same way that I remember in the late 90s in the internet, everybody was talking about disintermediation, and we're not going to need this and this kind of trusted third party for doing things. So in the same way, through NFTs, you can guarantee that the asset, that the token is representing a certain digital scarcity, a certain value, and you can guarantee that it's for an asset that is usually expensive, like art, it can be a fraction of that one. So it means you can start enabling access to more people than would have otherwise been able to buy an expensive artwork or vintage car and so forth. So that's the first problem that it was solving. And now it has new dimensions. So one of them is in gaming. A lot of NFT applications in gaming, where people are collecting land, let's say, obviously virtual land through NFTs. Again, because the land in itself has a certain specific characteristics, so therefore they are unique. Therefore, you can build certain buildings on them, or they are located in a certain place of the virtual world, and so forth. And the court case that I like to mention is the one in Korea, where virtual assets, NFTs that had been stolen, the court has clearly shown that this is an asset that can be referred to as property, and therefore all the different legal protection for a property applies. So very interesting to see that at the legal level as well, this is catching up. So we'd say gaming, and now another dimension is the interaction with brands. So there are many brands now, NBA, Formula One, Nike, Gucci, and so forth. These very well-known brands, mainstream brands, start to use NFTs because it's trendy, and because it offers a new relationship with their fans, their followers. And obviously now we are in a world of, as you were saying, social media,
influence, attention is such a big value.
Choice.
I love sorry, apologies. Do you have other use cases to add, or?
Well, quickly, there are some in finance, obviously, because not all financial products are the same. So there are some in finance, and real estate as well, if we look at it as an illiquid asset as well. So again, these are assets that are quite distinctive and that can be easily identified.
It's quite interesting, actually, and I think this question just came off the top naturally because of what we are discussing now in a conversation that I've had earlier today with a colleague of mine. So basically, based on what you say, and I completely agree with you, there are sort of like 4.5/5 use cases. So one of them is a manner to pass title on real property. So it's kind of an evidence that you own that asset, and maybe the right attached to that token, so you can transfer the right more easily. And with respect to that, maybe we'll go back to this point later. I see that there might be, the issue could be on the off the chain part of the operation, let's say, because dealing with the real assets, because that side could be compromised, even though the blockchain present all of the, DLT, distributed ledger technology, presents all of these kind of safeguards inherently. Then there is kind of the function of fragmentalizing value, which is something that I find really interesting as well, because the idea of being able to own art, but not only art, any form of property really, and not entirely, but just a fraction of it. Of course, it's not novel because you could have a company owning it, and then you could have shares in the company, but it sounds much simpler, doing it by way of NFT. Although you would still need, of course, if you were to do that, that would be a financial instrument, and you would still be covered under regulation, and you'd probably have to comply with all of the financial services regulation that applies to that. What's interesting, then the third case we said, it's gaming, like this concept of virtual assets. That's a problem that I completely perceive as a long-term gamer myself. You invest a lot of resources into a game. That could be time, financial resources, and then the moment you leave with nothing, and you're not entitled to any of the value that you've generated. And of course, that value is relative because it's not, you know, something that you could use in the open market, but within the ecosystem of the game, there is some value. And you know, and I think it would be beneficial for the player to be able to transfer that value to someone who's interested, to kind of recover some part of that investment. And then we said finance, right? Yeah, we spoke about finance and, for example, property. Now, here's what I'm very interested about. If we combine two of these, right? Because you mentioned also real property. So if we go back maybe 3 years ago, when Pokemon Go kind of exploded, right? There was a massive phenomena which was kind of, you know, overlapping intellectual property rights with the right to enjoy your own real property. So with like the right not to be disturbed, you know, like not to, because Pokemon Go, of course, is a geolocation-based application, geolocation and augmented reality-based application. And as such, randomly across it would scatter around, you know, kind of geolocation point within the platform that, you know, could potentially end in the private garden of someone. So there were phenomena of people, you know, climbing through the fence to come and catch a rare Pokemon and so on and so forth. Now, here's the interesting thing. I think that because right now there isn't really a concept of virtual property, right? I mean, virtual property surrounding your real estate in that form. So when you buy your house, if you have a freehold, let's say if you take England or Gibraltar, you do own the land, but you don't have any virtual right over it, right? Now, the more technological convergence, you know, moves ahead, and the more like all of the technology gather together, including geolocation, the ability to just oppose images such as augmented reality and so on and so forth, that becomes a problem. Because imagine if someone attaches to your house, and there have been cases, you know, offensive materials, it could be, you know, offensive iconography, like think about, you know, Second World War kind of iconography of extremist party and so on and so forth. So you don't really have a right against that at the present. But I think that slowly there will be kind of a virtual ownership land registry, right? That will allow owner of freehold to also secure that right, and also to transfer or license it, which would be very interesting, because then if you have a house, that means that you can license your house for advertisers to put, like, you know, adverts board. When you look at that, NFTs seems like a no-brainer in terms of being able to, you know, own the virtual rights over the property in the form of a non-fungible token, because it is unique to that house, but you might want to have the right to transfer it, because maybe you're, you know, maybe you're not concerned with how your house looks once, you know, you wear the augmented reality goggles, or what the technology is going to be out. But at the same time, you could monetize it. So why not? So, you know, I think that could be an interesting application. What's your opinion about that? Like,
I think the thing about this space is everywhere you look, there's another opportunity, and some of the opportunities are better than others. But that's for sure. It's something that if you're coming from a real estate angle or an advertising angle, you will definitely, you know, start sort of considering what the applications are. And NFT technology, probably Eddie knows better than me how you'd put it together. But the interesting thing there is that, you know, everything to do with advertising, for instance, has evolved. You know, at one time, you know, you probably wouldn't have imagined that you could rent out the side of your wall for an advertising hoarding, because no one would have actually approached you to offer you money for it. So these things all sort of come about as technology or service levels kind of come along to offer you that. My kind of fascination, I'm not a property guy so much, is the music and sports, but music particularly because of the challenges that the music industry has faced over the last 20, 30 years, 25 years, and how fast the technology has kind of, or not fast, but consistently, the technology has forced the industry into different directions where it's lost a lot and gained a lot, and it just really hasn't been able to take the lead technologically on its own destiny. So if you imagine when I grew up, everything was vinyl, and I loved buying vinyl albums when they came out. You'd pre-order them at a record store. You'd go, you'd have an experience, because, you know, the amount of resources that went into creating the artwork around the cover, You knew there was the limited editions. The first edition of an album would be significant, and as much, if not more, well, you know, depending on what artist it was, but some artists went to incredible lengths to stuff the albums with promotional material and other things that were for collectors. And now they're valuable. That, you know, old Elton John and David Bowie albums are worth fortunes. And then you move on to what we sort of touched on before, is the rights, which can be tokenized. But just moving back to what's happened since the demise of vinyl and the resurgence of vinyl in recent years, but still it went from CDs to streaming, and the revenue streams for artists were decimated, because they then sort of start focusing on live performances.
Exactly. Oh my God, I love that you said that. I was about to,
Well, that became, instead of being, you know, originally the live performance was to promote the album. You went.
Oh my God! Yes. Yes. Yeah. I wanted to say that. Look, I wrote it
and then oh, really? Well, that was the idea. You do the tour, promote the album, you sell the albums. So what's happened since then is now you got no album, so we make the money on the tour, and then we sell merchandise. So the music industry has adapted and had to adapt to the the technology rather than leading it. And so when it comes to, you know, the way things are now, with COVID, all the artists that had planned their stadium tours, which was the big, you know, money maker for them, especially if they're sort of in that rising trajectory and they can fill a stadium for the first time, you know, and that would be their big takeaways they're growing. That's gone, you know, and now what do? So you still got the same dynamic in the industry. You've got dedicated fans who love the fact that they've discovered an artist and they're going with them on their journey, and everything they can produce, the fan will consume. So enter NFTs for merchandise or collectibles, and combine those with cryptocurrency tokens that can be used in monetary effect for promotional purposes or incentives, and the whole thing is alive. The challenge is developing and integrating and talking to the community about that.
And I guess that more than the community itself, it would be about integrating it within this, you know, international network of collecting society. That, you know, like because if they start implementing it, ultimately, I don't think the artist would mind uploading, you know, the content onto a medium, because like I come from the music industry. I was a sound engineer, and there is often a lack of appreciation toward why do you earn? Like, why, you know, without copyright, artists would not be able to earn. Copyright is really the only thing that an artist has to bargain, you know. I mean, of course, there is the interest of the fan, but if you look at it from a commercial perspective, I just wanted to add two things about this very interesting, you know, topic that you went into. First of all, you know, the failure of the music industry to drive forward innovation or to embrace it, I think was largely, and that's like kind of widely accepted, it was largely on the part of major labels, because when they started seeing, you know, Napster and phenomenon like that, instead of embracing the new distribution method, they just sat on it because they were comfortable.
They go and try and sue their customers,
which was like completely nonsensical. Instead of embracing it, and who came around is Apple, an electronic company that develops computers, and they came out with iTunes, and they kind of provided the first solution, which I still think does not. I mean, it's evident now, but buying a digital copy of something that can be reproduced infinitely, that doesn't sound right. Like, to me, something like that has to be in the form of a service, like a Netflix or, of course, Spotify. You know, I'm not saying that that's a good kind of stream of revenue, although I do think that it generates a lot of revenue, because how many I love, of course, vinyl and physical copies, but they do present also their own challenges and their own like kind of like negative aspects. You know, they are subject to deterioration with time. They are subject to, which is part of their charm. They are subject to, maybe if you live somewhere, you know, far away in some third world country, you will not get access to it, no matter how much you like the artist.
I haven't. I've got a collection of vinyl albums that are in storage in the UK. because I haven't been able to bring them over to Gibraltar yet, and they're furniture.
That's what. But you come from the UK, and like the UK is like the holy grail of vinyl music. Like everyone went to the UK. Denmark Street in behind Tottenham Court Road. That street is like the history of rock and even pop, because that side of rock has really influenced all of the modern pop. But so but think about someone, for example, in a remote country, in a remote town, getting a vinyl for them is not something accessible. So I think that it's not as accessible. Again, it's part of the charm, because scarcity definitely increases the value of an item. But so that's one interesting, I think, aspect of it. The second, of course, that it's really interesting is how the model has shifted from doing live shows to promote your album to giving music for free to promote your live shows, and like this change of kind of this 180 kind of change. But also very interestingly, it's kind of the ties that the music industry has with finance. For example, with the Bowie bond, we spoke about it briefly last time, which is very interesting. If you could go into that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. That's the other side of the other aspect is the IP, isn't it? And the value in the IP, and that's something that I think is appealing to everyone in that sector as well, because you want to be able to monetize that. I think from the artist point of view, he just wants. He's not going to go through all the process of how this is going to work. It's the lawyers, it's the accountants, it's all and the labels are going to say this is the solution, and then the artist is either going to buy into it or he's not.
I think that part of that failure, I would have to say, part of that failure is a little bit on the hands of the artist, because I've been there, and when you want to create, you don't want to be bothered about it. You don't take an interest onto that thing.
You're not. Very rarely.
Exactly. But those that succeed,
does an artist take? The artist usually is going through a different kind of learning journey, because they start very young, and they are hungry for fame and success, and they don't have any business experience at all. And then you put them together in a room with lawyers and music moguls who've got tremendous experience, and every single story you look at from all
it's the industry of exploitation, for sure.
But that was how it was and how it is. I'm reading this latest book on David Bowie. He didn't make any money until and he got ripped off left, right, and center until he sort of eventually kind of matured and learnt from all those experiences. Elton John, you name it. Not sure the Beatles, but
no, that's the thing. I have a story. That's what I was trying. It's like those that, like you said, very few take an active interest in that, and those that do are extremely successful. So, for example, for those who don't know, and I think this is still the case now, but all of the material of the Beatles was under a subsidiary of Sony in Japan. And at some point they had to sell basically the portfolio, because normally these rights are bundled together. And who went and bought it? They offered it to Paul McCartney, and he refused. And who went and bought it is Michael Jackson. Yes. And then Paul McCartney went after years, because copyright is a great investment. It lasts 70 years from the day of, it lasts the life of the author plus 70 years, which means that it's like very, very, a very long time. Plus, you already have this framework of collecting societies that collect royalties on your behalf whenever someone legally uses your music, and that rate, the fee that these charge, is adjusted every year based on the inflation. So it's like inflation proof, so it's almost like a Bitcoin, if you like a crypto, where you say, the scarcity kind of like renders this category of assets kind of immune to the effect of inflation, because actually it goes through the exact opposite process, right? In a way, copyright could present similar characteristics, in that every year the fee that they collect from whoever plays your music is adjusted taking into account the inflation rate. So I think that's a great investment. And you see exactly Michael Jackson and David Bowie. So going back to Bowie bond very briefly, for those who are not familiar with what happened, basically David Bowie had this brilliant idea of taking things in his own hands. And what he did, he issued an instrument of debt.
He actually he had to buy out his manager for all the rights. That's what the money was used for.
Okay, not the record. Sorry, I thought it was the record label. So it was the manager that was okay. So, but basically collected, what he did, he issued an instrument of debt, so a bond, effectively to raise capital in order to buy all of his rights from the manager. As Malcolm highlighted, and then bought back all of the rights. Of course, immediately he indebted himself, but because copyright has such a good yield, he was able to pay off everything and then take full control over his creations. So yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that having NFTs could provide artists with a very intuitive way of understanding that they hold the right over a certain item, and that item, maybe they could plug it straight into the collecting society, almost like drag and drop, and see immediately, the rate of return, how many times it's been played. And I think that's very interesting. And, that could also be almost, well, go on.
I think the collecting society can also become just a smart contract, because that's decentralization is kind of the the motto and one of the main focuses of many crypto companies. And I think the problem is we still rely on a lot of trusted central parties, like you're referring to. I mean, I know you're talking about SACEM and all these music rights. I mean, the reason these companies exist is not only to enforce, is also because the accounting, the different rights are extremely complex. So no one is easily, no one is going to do that on their own. You're not going to desiccate all the rights and pay who you should be paying on your own without the army of maybe actuaries or whoever is working there, accountants and so forth. So I think NFTs and blockchain overall could simplify the whole process by having smart contracts that pay whoever should be paid based on how much they contributed to the rights, which includes, of course, all the engineers, sound engineers, and composers, and also the artists and so forth. And at the same time, they should also simplify the payment, because the problem with these collecting agencies is that they usually sit on the payments for a while, because they can, and they do. So if you start creating cash flows which are programmable, which are all managed by smart contracts, you remove a lot of people, you remove the collecting agencies, you remove a lot of costs, and you remove the friction between the revenues of the music and the artists, or maybe the record labels, if they still exist in the future.
The right owners,
So I think that's where technology should go, into removing a lot of intermediaries, make it easier for everyone, and make sure that the complexity is actually embedded, and it's kind of invisible because it's already programmed there.
Okay, it's solved from the back end.
Smart contracts, in a way, means what it should be, which means contracts that are encoded and that are working. Going back to your idea of the virtual house and the rights around the virtual house, it's interesting. It joins, and it happens a lot in this industry. We always have similar ideas at some points, but it joins an article which I haven't published yet, but the main idea is called Asset Tokenization Overlay, meaning that in the future, we could think about a future where all our assets have a tokenization overlay, meaning that anything we do, anything we own has this tokenization overlay, and we are able to transact these tokens at any point. So, and again, this is closer to NFTs than to tokens, because obviously all these assets will be extremely different and will be tied to, for example, a house, a location, myself, my assets, and so forth. So I think the NFTs is also a byproduct and an enabler, of course, of asset tokenization for the whole society. And that's something that is of a lot of interest for us as well in the whole process.
I absolutely love this term overlay. It's like sometimes you try to express something, and I think, expressing what you try to, what you're thinking sometimes can be such a challenging thing to do. I love this overlay aspect. And I also love the fact that you say that most asset could have this overlay kind of feature to them. But I also think, and you mentioned transact, I think what's the most, to me at least, the most exciting kind of use of a technology like that wouldn't really be that of transacting in the form of like transferring, like assigning, but it would be more in the form of licensing, because that would allow every one of us to create passive stream of passive income without really doing much, just with what we hold. And I think what would be interesting, and there is often within the intellectual property, / privacy world, this kind of struggle in identifying whether a person's image has, do you have an economical right to that, or is it more of a human right? And different jurisdiction approach it differently, but I think that having a form of control, of better control, over what data is being used about you, and understanding how the data is being commercialized and gaining a right to income would would befit both if we decide that the processing of your data stems from a human right, or whether we decide that the processing of your data stems from a commercial right that you have, as to fairness or welfare and so on and so forth. So I think that it combines them together, and we don't really need to struggle anymore thinking about, oh, is it that or is that, and try to find a solution, because this would solve both, because it gives you control to have no processing of data, or it gives you control to monetize from the data, which I think kind of solve both aspects. I think it's really, it's such an interesting topic. One thing that I wanted to ask you, and maybe, I'm wary of the time, I wanted to ask you if we could, close the interview, unless, of course, you have other points that you'd like to discuss and to talk about. But one interesting thing is that, of course, Coinsilium has this quite unique experience in developing an NFT, because we've been talking about now, oh, what about this use case and that use case? Well, you actually already implemented the project. We're not really speculating here. We're not really. So I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about this project, and then perhaps, tell us what kind of difficulties you've encountered in the development of this project.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, the technical aspects of the development of the NFT are being handled by our partner, technical partner, which is Red Fox Labs. We're kind of the commercial side and the market side, and also coordinating between the parties to ensure that the NFT, which is the counterpart, if you like, to the stamp, and also the area where we're sort of looking at the main adoption, if you like, is that they're tied together in the right way. So that's the kind of challenge for the development side that Red Fox Labs is doing, and maybe Eddy can sort of kind of expand on that. But in terms of the challenges, we're very early in the process. Well, I say early. We're going to be announcing the next thing we'll announce will be when the stamp will be issued, and final, artwork version, whatever it is that we can say before it's actually launched, and the pre-sale, which will be, I say pre-sale, people can pre-reserve the physical stamp and the whole process. But in honesty, that the challenges I think are on the technical side, but perhaps Eddy, you can expand on that, because they've kept me immune from those. I've just been doing the stuff I like doing, and having the meetings and making sure we're sort of overseeing the design and everything else. But I'm floating a little bit above all the day-to-day challenges, I'm afraid.
Yeah, as Malcolm was saying, the technical side, we're using Red Fox because they have created many NFTs. They have the top selling NFTs on the Wax platform. And the NFTs they have created are very interesting because they started as digital collectibles, but they also moving towards games. So basically it's a way from starting from a collection to actually then later on use them as games. So we're not going to reveal too much about the Gibraltar crypto stamp yet, but what we can say is that the NFTs enable us to add this dimension. So for example, obviously with a physical stamp, it's almost a two-dimensional play. You get a stamp, and you are one of the few owners around the world, and therefore you are happy, and you have your own let's say interest for having this stamp. But as soon as you go into the digital world and the NFTs, then we have other dimensions. So we bring a degree of randomization, we bring a degree of plurality. We're going to have different designs and different. So where the stamp is obviously one design that has been, you know, approved by the Philatelic Bureau, the NFT will have multiple designs and multiple features that we're not going to unveil here. But that's what's going to bring the very interesting and exciting dimension to it, and that's why. Okay, it's a pilot in a way. It's our first project with the Philatelic Bureau, but we see a lot of potential demand because again we are bringing something that is kind of the 1.0 version, which is a traditional stamp, and there are many sectors that are still there, especially in the collectible area, and we want to bring the excitement of the multi-dimensional world of digital and virtual assets. So that's what we're trying to bring here and make it you know, very special. And basically this gave us the idea as well to look at other sectors and other areas which we are working on and which we'll announce in the near future.
Look, Eddy, just a follow-up question from a technical standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, part of what makes, you know, distributed ledger technology such as blockchain very attractive is the fact that it is distributed. So, but where do you place the file when it comes to the NFTs? Because I suspect that if, you know, if the token holds the file, then very quickly the chain would become very heavy, and so very few people would be able to actually, you know, have enough space on their
no,
machine.
the file is not okay. So the NFT as embedded in the NFT, you have a link which links to a server, and although in reality, out of the $200 million worth of transaction of the top NFTs in the last few months, actually, if you look carefully into it, a lot of these are on very traditional servers, which is a bit crazy because normally you would look at a way to securing exactly what you're saying. So basically, the link in the NFT links to an image which is on a server, and obviously you don't want anyone to tamper with that image. Or but it may be strangely at the moment a lot of these servers are, you know, Amazon servers or whatever. They're not especially secured, or the link is not specially secure. Some projects, I think one of them is called Hashmark. Some projects start to use, you know, real on-chain applications, so that we could call it kind of the on-chain factor. So some NFTs are in the upper range of the on-chain factor, where they use maybe IPFS, which are decentralized server for compatible with blockchains, and you know, and there are some degrees, let's say, of on-chain compliance in a way with NFTs, which are not still so common today. So basically, you have extremely expensive NFTs with a file on a remote server, which could be changed at any point. So it's a bit strange, but that's what's going on at the moment. So I think in the future we'll go to a more secure
solution,
and actually, yes,
because
solution.
that was actually my question. And you know, I really, it's the first time I thought about that aspect of it actually now while speaking with you, because we interviewed in the previous season the CEO of Library. Are you familiar with it? It's like a content sharing. It wants to be sort of a YouTube, but based on blockchain and based on the view that you get their token, the Library token. The idea is good, but like I had the same question, you know, it's impossible, of course. I mean, if it's already difficult with images, with video, it's impossible. Like imagine downloading like all of the database of YouTube, it would be impossible. But and so, but in that case, you know, it's just, so the way the system that they use, you know, it's simply to kind of reward you with token as people consume your content. So really what's on the chain is, I think, similarly to what you just described, a hyperlink, you know, to the content. So now it's interesting about this NFT because, as you say, it's like, I think it's quite of a weakness, because then you cannot really, I mean, let's say if you decide to store the token in a cold storage, right? And now you see like people spending millions of dollars on NFTs. Great, you take it and you put it in your, you know, in your lock, but then something happened to the server facility, and you know, if there is no backup, it is destroyed. So really, what you're putting in your safe is a hyperlink. So
Yes,
it doesn't really,
correct.
it's not self-contained. So I think that's quite of a problem to solve. And I mean, data is becoming more and more portable and more efficient in terms of volume per, like data per volume. But still, like, you know, it's maybe no one told them, like, you know, you see like some people spend million on like a random painting. Have you seen like
but they're also buying into the brand that's selling it to them.
Yes.
So you'd hope that they, in the case of say NBA, that everyone would expect NBA to be around for a little while. And I think that anything to do with sports, it's the same. But I agree, if you have that issue of where do you see it, you might have a hyperlink somewhere that you know is immutable and it's never going to go away. And someone says, well, can I have a look at, you know, the image? Well, you know,
not there anymore. Sometimes maybe mutability for hyperlink could be a good thing, because imagine if the server needs to change the address.
It's something that just needs to be addressed. That's all. It's not. There will be, and the best solution will be the most. Or you know, the challenge is to come up with the best solution for that. But you know, I don't think anyone in this industry is looking at this as an existential threat to NFTs. They're looking at more of kind of growing pains and sort of obstacles and solutions that need to be applied.
But I think we need to be careful, because NFTs are marketed as being the exact same thing as fungible tokens, but you know, having all of the benefits, but in addition also all of this new set of benefits. And I think it's important to frame right the market. And bear in mind, I mean, it's clear from this episode, I'm super excited about NFTs. Like that's one of the things that I'm most excited about. I'm just saying, in terms of like communication to the market, I think it would be important to make sure that people understand that the distributable nature of blockchain is not, you know, a work of magic, but has, you know, practical implications. And that the outcome of that is that, you know, NFTs might not enjoy the same sort of you own you know, like you take the coin, you put it in a hard drive, you put it in and it's still there, it exists for now, for the time being. But I think it's very exciting, and without, you know, starting to adopt it, the solution will never come around. So I think it's important for people to start, you know, to increase adoption, and with that solution will follow.
Well, there's a lot of education going on as well, because at the moment, you know, we kind of are quite exposed to the investor community, who, if they're going to buy into Coinsilium, they're going to buy into Coinsilium as I don't mean just buy into our shares, but also buy into our vision. They're going to actually sort of have to go up a very steep learning curve to understand what the potential of NFTs are, alongside all the other you know, areas that we're focusing on, and in that case, you know, that learning process will take them to a better understanding of where the challenges are, and likewise, you know, we're not going to hide behind them. And you know, for instance, we had the same issues with ICOs. You know, we provided some advisory services to some very large ICOs, and we got paid pretty well for doing it. But you know, there was a beginning and an end to the project, and we got the fee and we sort of moved on. Now we're much more in the venture side, so we're going to be, you know, building things that are going to have sustainability and longevity. But the important thing is that you, as you say, you can't get ahead of yourself. Everyone has to know what they're actually getting into, and make no mistake, you know, NFTs are, you know, the potential is huge. And as you quite rightly pointed out, there will be challenges along the way, because you know, it's not fully formed by any stretch of the imagination. And these things are going to be, you know, as an entrepreneur, and sort of Eddy and I kind of look at things very similarly. When we get an idea, we always look at what it could be, and what could, you know, how we can add value, and if we add value, what's the potential. And if you approach things from that way, you will always see challenges, and a lot of it is down to your attitude towards those challenges. You know, if they're insurmountable, then, or if they're not cost effective to solve, then you have to be realistic about it. But if you see the opportunity is so big, you say, we'll deal with that one when it comes up, you know, and that challenge, we'll deal with it. But we definitely know that there's, you know, we don't know what the solution is right now, but we know that there will be one, because the scale of the opportunity is so big that that that's
it warrants the risk. That's you know, I love this dichotomy between like the kind of like risk reward approach to new ideas, because I think when you look at it from an entrepreneur standpoint, you know, of course, err much more toward the reward side of it. And I was speaking about the same with Daniel Leon, the CEO of Celsius. And, you know, he was saying the same thing. And I think, you know, I resonate with that. But then on the other hand, I have this conflict day to day of being a lawyer, you know, where you look at something and you need to see basically all what's wrong with it. And so I think that there is that kind of like internal conflict. But look, I mean, I'm worried of the time. I'm happy to go on for the entire afternoon, but
we got viewers and audience to consider. They might
exactly
they might want to eat and get on with their lives.
Exactly. So if you have anything to add, please do. Otherwise, you know, it was really a pleasure. I'm really glad you came on Blockchain Rock, and you know, we wish you the best for this project and for the many other that I'm sure will follow. And we hope to host you again very soon. You know.
Thank you, Eddy. Anything?
Thank you, Abby. No, that's fine. Thank you very much, and I hope.
Thank you.
Hope it was interesting for everyone.
Speak to you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye bye.